Hello everybody, welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself George bringing you a brand new review, and today I'm going to be reviewing Elio, which is now out in cinemas, the latest Pixar film. And yes, I have just got back from the blistering heat of what is going on here in the UK. It's absolutely horrific. I'm currently in a room on the third floor in a house, boxed in with the heat. I've got a light on there, camera on here, laptop here. I might have melted by the end of this review, but I'm here to do a review because I have seen Elio today in a lovely air-conditioned cinema, driving to and from in an air-conditioned car. So at least there's been some positives with the weather, with getting those out the way. But yeah, let's talk Elio. And with this film now being out in cinemas, I do want to hear what people think on this one. So please do comment your thoughts on Elio, whether you look forward to the film, what your thoughts were on it. Did you enjoy it? Did you not? Your thoughts on Pixar as a overall. It's obviously a humongous studio, and it's their latest film. It's one going very much under the radar, I think is safe to say. I don't know how many people know this film was coming out. There was 4 people in my screening. It was one family of 4 plus me. That's how busy it was for 5:15 on a Friday. Normally for animated films, family films, it's packed at this sort of time. So I am curious to see who sees it, how many people go and see it, what the thoughts will be. I'll make some comparison to other Pixar films a little bit later on. And at the end of this video, I'm also going to be doing a humongous announcement for the channel for something we're going to be doing soon. Soon being a few months. So that's something I'm going to be mentioning too. But let's talk about this. So my thoughts heading into this. I will be totally honest. I hadn't seen much about this. I am hitting a phase now where I'm trying to avoid film trailers for a lot of films, but I can avoid it. With certain studios or certain films, I'm more than happy just turning up when the film is out. If I'm sold on the premise, if I'm sold on the studio, I will just go and watch it. Now, I haven't seen a lot of advertising for this. I'm not online in very much the type of circles where everyone's going to be sharing Pixar trailers. When we watched Lilo and Stitch a month ago, we literally saw the end of this trailer, so I've really not known a lot about it. I've seen the posters, I've seen, been able to make the thumbnails, this sort of stuff, and I've known the story. It's about a child making his way in space. The character of Elio, of course, and I should really talk about the story, and I'm going to talk about the story, but I do want to talk about the directors too. It's been directed by Madeline Sharafian, which I hope I pronounced right, Demi Shea, and Adrian Molina, all of which are co-directing this film together. Each of them has worked on Pixar films before. I believe this is Adrian Molina's idea. I think Demi Shea worked on Turning Red and a few others, and Madeline Sharafian, I think this is the first film she's co-directed. I could be wrong. So it's very much a new generation of Pixar. And it's so important with Pixar when you come into these, as much as we look forward to our sequels, which some of us do, some of us don't. The studio was built upon these incredible original films with these amazing concepts and out there ideas, all of which had an incredible story, heart, and character moments to go with it. So it's a studio that I've always been fond of, and people that know this channel know it's not that I'm not the biggest fan of animation. My knowledge of animation is not like it is for certain other genres or mediums. It is just something I'm less versed in as opposed to others. But Pixar is the studio I've always resonated to, whether it be nostalgia at a young age, my enjoyment as an adult, the horrific enjoyment as an adult where you sort of end up crying at every film. I think it's a studio I've just gravitated towards that I haven't with others. And I haven't seen enough from others, which is something I'm mentioning. It's not I shy away from things, I just haven't seen a lot of them. And there's a lot more animated films I do need to watch in the coming years. But as I said, the story, it's about the passing of Elio's parents. He then goes into his being raised by his aunt Olga, and then he is, you could say, accidentally abducted by aliens as part of space being known as Earth's leader. So that's like the worst elevator pitch I could give this film. What really this film is, if I would like to sort of take the front horn of it, this is a coming-of-age film about grief, loneliness, and family relationships. We know Pixar can do grief, we know they can do loneliness, and we know they can do family. So it has everything going for it that I as an adult will enjoy. I'd like to think it's got things going for it that kids would love. It's about this kid, 10-year-old, being put into space to go on an adventure and to make friends with aliens and go into alien cultures. I'd love that if I was 10 years old. And like some of the best Pixar films, it's got everything going for it once you settle in. It's a little bit different with comparisons to others. It's not as heavy with the grief as something such as Soul, but it's very much more enticing to all that younger demographic that they're going to have an amazing time with this. They're going to love the visuals, they're going to love the characters, the designs of the aliens, the other cultures we get to see. And that's where I think the film really comes into its own. It doesn't feel like, oh, Pixar's just gone to space like Lightyear, which is valid criticism. It feels like we've created this new space that happens to be within Pixar. If Pixar was doing space, this is how space should be. And this is how it ends up being. And I've got to say, it's one of the most incredibly designed Pixar films of the last few years. I know that animation is always incredible, and they, I think, are the best in the business at animation in terms of how they animate, what they're able to do, especially with modern budgets and how technology's developed further and further. But going to the roots of animation, the designing of these worlds, their hyperspace travel, it's not a Star Wars ripoff, it's these incredible squares which you can see in the advertising campaign, and how it works on the eye was just remarkable. I loved the animation concept in this, and it's really glowing for Pixar that whilst they are getting criticised for doing more and more sequels, and maybe this doesn't perform potentially, I'm not going to make any comments about box office. Just look at Elemental's first weekend compared to what Elemental then did for multiple months. And Elemental was also another massively underrated one, which is, again, a newer original Pixar film. And I'm going to go on a sideways tangent as such and not turn it into a rant, but those people that sit there saying, Pixar, you keep making sequels, make something original, where are they watching the original films? Are they? They should be, because it's hypocritical if they don't. As I said, I'll be seated at each of the Pixar films. I love them as a studio. And I agree with some of it. Oh, we can't have sequels? Well, you know, the third Pixar film was a sequel. It's not like they were brought in 20 years later. However, I agree at times there's too many of it. There is somewhat feeling safe. There is a studio saying, let's make more of these. But making more of these does bring in money, and the money it brings in should then be reinvested into making original films like this, to put this on the pedestal, to give this film a chance down the line. You don't get to have those moments without reinvesting it elsewhere. And I think that's the root of this studio, when there are animators and directors with ideas of stories they would like to tell, to get the opportunity to do it. The fact Pixar has very much always been an in-house company, I think, has worked so well for their approach, and it's reflected again in this film, Elio. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the characters, because I mentioned, you know, this of course is a film about grief. We've got the character of Elio, the opening scene. Obviously, we don't see it, but he's with his auntie, and is very much made clear that she's took him in at this point. Both of his parents passed away, and she's basically given up the career path of being an astronaut because she needs to essentially be his guardian, be his mother as such. And I believe it was rewritten that it originally was about him and his mother, and that was re-chimed into being his auntie, which I'm very curious by the reasoning behind that. Might it be a bit too heavy if they played the single mother angle for a Pixar film, giving up their dreams for a child? I don't know. We know that obviously in recent years Pixar's done far more rewrites and changes to story, which is something obviously, you know, unless you're actually there and know what's going on, you don't know what's going on. But that was something I thought about with this one. So we've got a very fractured relationship. And I just sat there for ages thinking, why have I seen this recently? Why have I watched a film recently where it's about this, the relative that's took in the younger child? And it just took me 2 hours to realise, shit, I seen Lilo and Stitch the first time last month, before the new one came out. I watched the animated one. And it was kind of similar to an extent. It is dealing with the grief lost by the parents in another family relationship, and I think it's quite empowering at times. I think Elio handles it really well, and the concept of the child wanting to get away isn't just get away, go to orbit. I want to get to space. I want to get as far away from this planet because this planet doesn't want me. And I loved that as a story angle, aside from the very basic space angle that any child would enjoy. I think this adds so much more to it. And in line with that, having the alien creatures come into it as a whole, we've got the character of Gordon, who becomes Elio's, you could say, best friend. It's a very, very cute relationship, as you expect of Pixar. And he is the son of a warlord, Lord Gregon, played by Brad Garrett. And it's also about the father-son relationship, that you've got the son that doesn't want to follow his father's footsteps. And it's about bringing them together. It's about their relationship, and again, we know how well Pixar can handle those relationships and the loss they've had as a father-son over time. So I absolutely adored it from a story perspective. I really enjoyed the characters that went on with it, and I loved the animation. And I think they're all the ingredients that you want. Because with the Pixar films, not just popular because they've got good animation, they've always been popular because they've just got some of the most incredible characters. And I think we have a few here, particularly the father-son with Gregon and his son and the warpath and everything. The contrast of animation styles to bring in a warlord and an army versus this beautiful alien community that they go to, that they're vibrant with. There's such stark contrast in the animation style, the design styles. It lends itself to what the story goes on to do, and I think that's where this film comes into its own. And I think, actually, it's very fair in me saying it's a very good film. And it's kind of weird, because with Pixar, you expect it to be a good film. So when it's a good film, you talk about it. But there's not as much to say about some of their other ones before. And it's a really weird way, I think, because the consistency of the studio is what lends them to having this reputation, that lends them to telling these stories. And far more often have they got it right than they've ever got it wrong. And I think that's the key with them as a studio, and why I think so many of us are latched onto them. We know we've got Hoppers coming next year. So we've got 2 original films in a row before we get to the next sequel. So there is things to celebrate, there are things to look forward to. But overall, my thoughts on overall, I didn't even talk about the score. Rob Simonson did the score for this film. It's got a beautiful score as well. And again, it's playing with the interstellar travel, with the space narratives. Look at some of the historic films of recent years where we've had these incredible composers come on board and create these anthems, these themes, and to give space its own persona. This film delivers that in the score as well in some of those sequences. There's got to be full credit to Rob Simonson. I wanted to bring that up before I got into my final thoughts. And my final thoughts is I love this film. It's a very good film. I do recommend it for people that want to watch it. Now, you don't need to rush to the cinema to see it. The animation is gorgeous, absolutely. But I do not believe this is a sort of day one, let's get to the cinema, let's get this scene. If you want a couple of hours in the aircon like me, go for it. It was pretty much empty. It may be empty for the foreseeable future. Lilo and Stitch is still doing huge numbers, and I'd imagine a lot more families are probably prioritising going to see that or see that again versus something like this, which is somewhat understandable. I don't think the window for this film has been as good as it could have been, but as I said, we are going to obviously find out more in the coming months. I don't know if maybe July could have been a little bit better, although that probably means I'm missing a huge family film coming out at mid to late July potentially. So yeah, it's a recommendation from me. It's kind of what I'm expected. I really did enjoy it. I didn't know what to expect, if I'm honest. And the problem you can have with a studio that you really enjoy is when you can get disappointed by them, or something can't click, or it takes you multiple viewings. But I loved it in this, and I think sort of 10-year-old, 7, 8-year-old George would love this too. You know, it's a kid that loves Pixar, so this definitely lends itself to that family environment. And that's kind of my final thoughts on this. But going into this video, we've obviously got to talk about something else, and you can put 2 and 2 together. We're going to be doing a humongous series this November. And you know, I'm thinking, why is he announcing it now? It's what, June? It's almost July. We are going to be doing a retrospective series on Pixar. We're going to be reviewing every single film, starting from Toy Story, going all the way to Toy Story 5 next June. A 31 episode series, and I kid you not, presuming a release date doesn't change, we will be starting on the anniversary of the original Toy Story from 1995. That 31 weeks for the 31 films takes us to the release week of Toy Story 5. That release date doesn't change. We've been gifted the best coincidence in history for doing a series on the channel. But what the series is going to allow us to do, it's going to allow us to bring on friends of the channel, people you've seen before, people you haven't seen before, to talk about the histories of Pixar, to revisit these films in a retrospective, some years after they've come out, others decades after they've been out. It's a series we've been looking forward to doing. We haven't done a review series on a big franchise in quite a while, and I've just mistakenly called this a big franchise. We haven't done a studio retrospective on this channel before. It's kind of crazy when you think about it in that way. And I know that some places have done studio retrospectives and they can be a lot of fun. There's an incredible Disney podcast ran by one of the guys that works for Empire, I forgot the name, Disneyversity. And I've always wanted to cover Pixar because that's the studio I'm attached to. That's something I would like to commit. I have thumbnails that I've already edited. I've got banners, artwork all in play. We are working on this behind the scenes. And as I said, it's months away. It's going to come out in November. It's going to start in November is the key word. We'll be pre-recording videos, so they'll look to be in October time. But I wanted to use the Elio video to discuss that. So if there are fans of Pixar, do hit that subscribe button. There's going to be a lot more Pixar coming your way later this year as we do celebrate the anniversary of one of the greatest films of all time. It's going to put us on a wild retrospective to talk about films we've never been able to speak to on the channel before. So it's going to be a lot of fun with that, whether it be revisiting some of the newer ones I've seen once or the old ones we've seen a million times. There's plenty there for everyone, and I really hope you're going to enjoy it. So that's me rounding out on the Pixar announcement, rounding out on this review of Elio. There's more to come on the channel. I'm going to be seeing the F1 film on Monday, so there's going to be a review coming out for that. I'm missing the review for 28 Years Later. I've just seen the trilogy for the first time. Tate will get a solo one up for that one. And there's going to be plenty to talk about. It's summer blockbuster season, but I'm also absolutely boring, so I can't go for everything. So this is me rounding out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.